a little bit around, again, the topic of critical KPIs, really related to service KPIs, learn a little bit about them and then calculating ROI off of those, right? So it's meant to be informative and helpful. And if anything, it should just spark some internal conversation of, hey, we really should be thinking about different metrics or different KPIs here. And we should really think about tracking them and then eventually get to a point where you can calculate ROI against them. So that's the whole idea behind this today. Tyler, if you want to advance the slides, you're seeing both of us, right? You're stuck with me. I get to be the MC of this and talk for a while. Tyler's going to do a lot of the meat and value side of this, I promise. Andrew Knox, I run sales and marketing here at MSI Data. Tyler, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. Tyler Hart, solution engineer here at MSI Data.
Yeah, I always find it awkward when you're here and then I don't let you introduce yourself. But anyways, you're going to be sitting with both of us. We are going to spend probably the next 25 or so minutes together walking you through a little bit. We'll open up towards the end for questions. And again, this is recorded. It will be sent out to everyone who's registered, attended, and then of course made available for others to view. So feel free to share it out across your orgs. Let's get to the agenda. So today's agenda has really three components to it, three pillars to it. First, where we're going to start is just grounding ourselves in the topic of key performance indicators or KPIs, right? Field service KPIs being the main focus here based on where we focus as an organization. But, what is it? What are some of the top metrics that folks should be thinking about? Why are they important? That's where we're going to start. Then we'll transition over to kind of some paths, some thoughts about how you should be thinking about tracking against these different metrics you set as a group, as a project, as a team, right? Individual, and then past the ROI, right? So you understand some KPIs. Now, how do we get started tracking and measuring against them? And then finally, which is super exciting for me, with the marketing brain part that I have, is we are launching a free live on the website ROI calculator. Technically, it's there already, but if you all can wait till after this to check it out, that's gonna be awesome. Tyler's gonna walk you through a couple of examples, and then there'll be a QR code at the end that you take you right there. But it is live up on the website. We're excited to launch it. Would love feedback and also ideas of other metrics you'd like to see based on some of the data our clients are giving us and some of the things we're seeing within the service market. So that's what we have planned today. With that said, Tyler, let's jump right in. So I told you we were going to start basic. I'm just going to ground us in definition. My buddies Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Gemini helped me come up with this. Those are AI algorithm simulators if you aren't familiar. So KPI, key performance indicator, right? A key performance indicator is quantifiable metric. The quantifiable and metric, right? Quantifiable being number is a key piece to the definition that measures an organization's progress toward a specific business objective or strategic goal. Now, again, me and my buddies, AI, came up with this. Pretty good definition. I think it really fits the bill. So I just want to break the phrase down, right? The acronym KPI. So key is the indicator that should focus on the most important aspect of performance that will drive success. So it's an indicator, right? It's not, this is pretty common sense. But the one thing I want to make sure everyone understands, you're going to have a lot of metrics and a lot of numbers floating around the organization. And not every metric needs to be or should be a key performance indicator. Still have metrics that aren't some of the top metrics that you're chasing as an organization or tracking against. So that's key. Performance, how are you going to measure it, right? This is the measurement of how well, or in some cases, how off or not well an organization, team, project, or individual is doing, again, against that key performance indicator, right? So performance, right? It's the measurement. And then indicator, it provides a signal showing whether you're on track or to achieve the goal or not. And so just wanted to break everyone down. This is not probably new to everyone, but why not start here, make sure that we bring any of those folks up to speed that maybe were thinking about it, didn't know to ask, right? I've been that person in class before where I had a question, didn't want to ask. Now you don't have to. So that's the base. Tyler, let's move forward. So where I wanted to start is just a best practice when thinking about key performance indicators or setting some KPIs within an organization. It's just a tip. That's it. Take it or leave it. Take it for what it's worth. But we follow an acronym called SMART. So SMART is an acronym used for setting goals, metrics, or again, KPIs. You want to make them specific. They want to be very defined and focused. If you have a crazy, metric that you're trying to track that has no ability to be focused, right? It's going to be very hard for anyone to achieve and or track along the way, right? So be very specific and thoughtful as you start setting different metrics and KPIs within your organization. That's S. M, measurable. We talked about this within the definition, quantifiable metric. It has to be trackable and quantifiable, right? So it has to be numbers based, right? Otherwise it becomes subjective or emotional. And that's not really the point of setting a metric or a KPI. You want to try and remove emotion and subjective aspects to it and make it very fact and data driven. So it has to be measurable, right? Or let's not say has to, should be measurable, right? That's probably a better way of saying that. Achievable. Hey, I run sales, I run marketing. Elise helps me set up all these webinars. I set goals for the team as a group and at each individual level. Nobody likes to get unattainable goals, right? It's like setting a quota for somebody that they just look at it and they're trying to figure out, oh, how, like this is insane. I can't do 50% growth this year, right? Those things happen. And so that's one thing to warn you against. Don't make it a layup, but make it achievable, make it realistic and attainable so that you can actually start to see a path to achieving it. If we do what we're supposed to, if we do the right things, this goal is absolutely achievable. It's not a layup, it's not a gimme, but it absolutely is realistic. So make your goals achievable. Relevant. It should align with the overall strategy of the function of the organization, right? Where you're going, you usually set annual strategic objectives or initiatives. Metrics that you set should roll up to a piece or the overall strategic objective that you, as an individual contributor or a team or a project that's being established, is going to be focused around. So it should align with the overall strategy or larger strategic objective of the organization. And time bound, there has to be a clock on this. It cannot be evergreen. So it has to be tracked over a set period of time. And that's smart. And this is just a tip or a best practice when setting metric-based goals. Again, we're focused on the topic of KPIs right now. So it's just, again, this is probably something you may have heard of, but I find it very, very useful just to always come back to the basics. Doing the basics right mean all of the other things are a little bit easier to manage and monitor along the way. So that's smart. If you have questions, happy to take those offline or later in the presentation, but definitely something to keep in mind as you start setting and thinking about metrics and KPIs within your organization. All right, so I'm going to set the stage here, and then I promise I will stop talking. So we sat down, man, this must be 2.5, 3 years ago now, with a third party, agency that was able to do a little bit of market research for us. And over several hundred interviews, this third party, again, unbiased, not us, not only Service Pro users and customers, they went out to other service organizations within various verticals across the segment and talked to them about areas that they were struggling with and areas that they wanted to be able to track better. So one of the pieces of that project that we got was about 10, 15 or so top critical service KPIs that more often than not, folks were focused on, wishing they could track better, we're already tracking today. So all I'm going to have Tyler run through is the first 10, right? You see 5 here, there's 5 more after. I'm going to have Tyler run through kind of the first 10 or top 10 that we got back from this research that, again, I think if you're not thinking about these or tracking these, hopefully this at least spurs a dialogue internally or a light bulb moment for you individually With that said, Tyler, why don't you kick us off with number one, average technician travel time?
Yeah, sure thing. So as we think about how these standard KPIs are defined, that first one being average technician travel time, the thing to think about there is how many hours per work order or minutes, but mostly hours, are technicians traveling to a job. Usually that time's not billable. And so in understanding just how much time are technicians on the road, how much money are we spending on gas? That's where customers can leverage the tracking of that average technician travel time metric. Moving down further, we see technician utilization. Some folks will also call it labor utilization. Ultimately, what percentage of work in a technician's day, week, month is billable against total hours? Average time to invoice. Now, with average time to invoice, the way to think about this is how much time does it take us from the time work is completed in the field to the time we ultimately send an invoice out the door to the customer? That's critical because when we think about, that metric that sometimes is referred to days sales outstanding, well, we want to be able to turn an invoice around quickly for a customer to collect and get paid. And so that's a common metric, average time to invoice, the time that labor is completed or applied in the field to the time you ultimately send an invoice to the customer. Customer satisfaction. How happy is the customer? And so largely we find that this metric is defined typically through survey results of some sort, right? Rate your service 1 to 10, provide feedback, but that's customer satisfaction is ultimately how happy is the customer, because ultimately you'll want that visibility, right? We don't want customer churn. We want to know which customers are happy or not happy. Preventative maintenance on-time completion rate. And so this is where you might have planned maintenance that you're performing on customer equipment. And this ties back to customer satisfaction in a way in that we want to understand how good are we at staying on time with planned maintenance. Because if we aren't on time with planned maintenance, the equipment might hit failure, and then our customers aren't going to be happy when their equipment doesn't work. And so one of those common KPIs that we found was that PM on-time completion rate. How do we stay on time at managing planned maintenance, and how good are we at staying on time? Now, those are the first five. We have five more. And so as we continue to move through the list, the next one is first time fix rate. And so when we think about all the work orders that we're creating, how good are we at completing that work order and accurately defining the work that was completed the first time that a technician's out there? That's what first time fix rate is measuring, is ultimately the percentage of work orders that are completed that first visit. Completed orders. This one's pretty straightforward, but how many work orders are we completing? Whether that's per week, per month, per year, that helps you trend the data, right? And see where your business is going. Average time to complete. Now, although we had average time to invoice earlier, average time to complete is a little bit different. You also may know this metric as mean time to repair, but ultimately it's how long does it take us to complete the work order? From the time the work order comes in the door and creates to the time we have a technician out in the field and it's completed. What is that average time that it takes to complete the job? Average response time. This is where, how long does it take us from the time the customer reaches out to the time the technician's on site? Why is that important? Well, helps us understand what are those SLAs that sometimes we may define with our customers when we sell those service contracts. Well, it helps to have visibility around what those response times are that we can maybe promise to our customers. And so that's where average response time comes into play. The last one that we'll touch on here is variance from standard repair time. What that metric is providing visibility into and how that's defined is really, you may sell a job at maybe a specific X amount of hours, a specific labor estimate. Well, then you probably want to understand how close are you to those budgeted hours. And so that's where, from an organizational standpoint, using that variance from standard repair time metric, you can get more accurate quotes out the door because you're able to understand, hey, on this job, we typically quote out this many hours, but actually our technicians are taking this long to complete it. That's the insight provided for variance from standard repair time. And really, those are the 10 metrics that we are going to walk through and define here. And so as we think about, the standard KPIs that we found and going out to the market with our third-party partner and defining, it's now the part in our webinar where we think about, how do we just track KPIs? And so that's where, the first part, when we think about, how do we track KPIs? How do we set those KPIs up? It's all about understanding the health of your service business. And so as you think about that, it's starting to get into, well, where are the bottlenecks within your organization, right? Because as you think about the overall health of your business, it may spawn questions around, well, where could we improve the business? And as we think about those areas of improvement, it then starts to ask questions around how do we improve that? Where are there training opportunities? Where are the efficiencies that we can gain? And then once we understand what are those efficiencies to help improve those operations, what are the dollars and cents tied to those opportunities for improvement? And so taking that in and throwing out some real world examples here. And so as we've had some customers that went through that exact process, they had bottlenecks within their organization. It then made them think about, well, how do we improve those bottlenecks? What are the opportunities for improvement? And as we make those improvements, how do those efficiencies tie to actual dollars within our organization? How do they improve profitability? Well, that is where we had customers that set up some of the KPIs that we just discussed. And those KPIs were able to provide real-time visibility into profitability for their organization. And so what you see on screen are a couple of those metrics. I'll call out just a few here. But one of those metrics is a 3-week reduction in invoicing time. Well, if we think about that average time to invoice, what was going on is we had a customer that their field service management solution wasn't speaking to their accounting system. And so through that average time to invoice metric, once they implemented a connected field service solution with their ERP, they were able to see a reduction in that metric by 3 weeks. Another metric that we'll talk about is average add-on revenue per inspection. And so we'll look at this more in a little bit with our calculator. But as we think about just technicians finding follow-up opportunities in the field, this can tie to that completed orders metric in that, hey, we've got technicians going out on every order. They're completing that work. But what if we set up a required inspection that looked at follow-up opportunities on every single completed order? How can we drive further revenue opportunities? And so we had one customer that did that. And in this customer example, they actually found that, hey, because we have orders that are essentially asking required follow-up opportunities that our technicians needed to find, they were finding that on average, technicians were identifying roughly $1,200 in opportunities on every work order. And so those are just some examples of how KPIs tie directly to profitability and being able to find efficiencies or inefficiencies and make changes to further define.
Awesome. Well, so yeah, the 3-week invoicing one always gets me because I just think about how if I would complete work and then our CFO didn't bill almost same day, right? Here, it's almost same day. So 3 weeks is just, that's such a long time to be, I don't know, managing the paper or that gap. I don't even know how you do it, right? And then you remember to do it, but it's 3 weeks later. Just the cash, you're out of that cash. You're probably paying the tech and paying employees well before that based on every payroll cycle. So just out the cash for that's crazy. So yeah, that one's a fun story. I'd love to talk about it a little further. Again, have to be offline, so can't disclose too many details, but really cool one. Now, before again, I turn this back over to Tyler, set the stage for obviously where we're headed around the topic of calculating ROI on some of these metrics or KPIs that we just talked about, right? Because at the end of the day, you invest in something. Right now, most of our customers, they're investing in a field service management platform. They're investing in Service Pro. But if you think about this across everything, not many people invest in anything not expecting some sort of payoff or ROI, right? You want to ensure that your investment is the right investment, that you're using the investment that you've made, right? When it comes to technology, that you're leveraging it. And then eventually it's either coming in the form of savings, efficiency, more revenue identified. Again, Tyler's getting excited because he gets to talk about this and show it in a minute. But, I think just wanted to set the stage for talking and thinking about ROI. And I know Tyler's going to run through stuff. So, Ty, I'm going to pass this back over to you. But I just thought, setting that stage and making sure people understand that if you invest in something, you have to expect to see a return or to get something out of it, right? Could be an experience, again, could be savings, efficiency, revenue. Um, but I'd say why not show the calculator? I think we just show it.
That's perfect. And so with that said, let's pull up our calculator. Really excited to walk through it here. And so as we think about the ROI calculator that's now available, this is all tied to those critical KPIs that we just walked through and discussed earlier here today. And so within the calculator, this is where, if we have our shoes on as an organization, curious to see what their ROI could be by creating more efficiencies within service. Well, when we go into the calculator, this is where we can enter in just a few simple questions, and there is going to be some logic on the other side of this calculator that ties directly to those KPIs. And so we can see how is profitability measured by improving some of those critical KPIs based on the inputs that we're about to enter. And so let's say we're an organization with maybe 50 technicians, and we do 3,000 work orders per month, which not a mathematician, but last time I did this calculation, that's about 3 work orders per day, assuming about a 20-day work month. We do have some assumptions built in to get started. I should say default values, not assumptions. But in this case, maybe our first time fixed rate at the moment is about 70% month to month. Along with that, maybe we think our current billable utilization is about 70%, which is close to the benchmark, but still a little underachieving. As we enter in those inputs here now, there's just a few more bullets that we'll throw in, such as what's the name of our organization, and of course an email. And we'll
And
go
then
ahead.
when you click get results, you get to see them live. And then they also, right, are sent to you directly in email. So you get a copy of these results directly to your inbox.
That's right. That's right. And so while we are going to get an email, what we'll actually focus on is what's on screen, those results. So there's a lot of numbers here. So let's break
It's
it
a big
down,
one at
right?
the top,
That
Tyler.
is a big one. That is a big one. So how is it doing that? Where is that number even coming from? All right. So we entered in the number of work orders that we complete roughly per month, which was about 3,000, right? Well, what this is looking at is saying, okay, for each of those work orders, if you had a technician identify revenue opportunities, follow-up work, they might be on a planned maintenance visit, but they know, hey, maybe a filter could be changed out on the next visit, right? Those are revenue opportunities that can be identified. And so if we identify just one opportunity for every 3,000 work orders. Well, we've found that based on our customers using the solution today, that on average, they're finding about $2,400 per work order in revenue opportunities. And so we used that math along with the assumptions by the data being entered into the calculator, and that's how we got $7 million in revenue opportunities identified per month by technicians being able to capture inspection results on work orders. Moving down further, increase in utilization. What's one more billable hour per week? How does that affect your labor? Well, that's a question you got to think about. But in this case, based on the number of technicians, we'd have about a 4% increase in utilization.
When we were putting this together, Tyler, I remember I challenged you because I was like, most customers are telling me they're gaining more than one billable hour per week per tech. I actually hear more often than not, it's an extra job or almost gaining a full day back because they don't have to drive back to the office to turn their slips in, or they don't have to go back to their truck and document everything for an extra hour after every job, right? So I always challenge this. So to me, this is super conservative. I don't know what you'd say to it though.
I agree, it's conservative. The way to think about it is what's another 15 minutes per day that a technician doesn't have to spend dropping off a slip of paper, right? 15 minutes per day, that's an hour per week. Just something to think about. But I like to be conservative with that one. Perfect. Now the next one, first time fix rate. So how do we look at that metric? Well, again, if you have that field service solution where you can set those required parameters, well then it's going to guide those technicians to the exact data that needs to be collected before they leave the job site. And so that's where we then see an increase in that first time fix rate based on, again, our input of what we think it is today. And by being able to improve those processes through better data collection and required data, of course.
I will say I was doing a bunch of research on this first time fixed rate. And when I went out, talked with customers, again, looked at the market, a lot of different documentation and publications around this. High performing service organizations have a first time fixed rate percentage. It was like 89, 90, 91 or higher. So we met in the middle, put the calculation at 90%. And that is qualified as a high performing service organization when it comes to first time fixed rate. So yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, then the last one actually correlates directly to first time fixed rate, right? Is what is the actual cost savings in dollars, right? If we improve our first time fixed rate, that generally means that we're reducing the amount of times we send a technician back out to complete a job. Less second truck rolls means more money saved. And so that's where we then see $90,000 in this case, which is based on, again, average data collection of about $500 per truck roll. And so that's where we then get, okay, 20% increase in first time fixed rate means that we save about $90,000.
Tyler, if you can just do me a favor, if you hover over resources at the top, I just want to show people where on the website this is right now. So resources, ROI calculator, and you can go through, you could run this simulation as much as you want. Again, feedback's encouraged. What I'd also love to hear from people that go through this and fill it out is what's the next KPI that you want us to start making, available to you to start playing with out, free, no cost on our website. Now, we did start with these because it was very easy to ask the information, but there's definitely more that we have that we're working on. It just requires a lot more data input, right? And it becomes a bit more tenuous. So I think this is super valuable. This is awesome. I'm super excited that it's out. Why don't we pivot back to the deck now if we were able to give one example to folks? Here's the QR code that you can go out onto the website. Again, we showed you how to navigate to it. This will take you right there. I want to open it up. Questions can come via chat. Tyler and I are here to answer, really any that you may have. Otherwise, again, this will be made available. You can rewatch it, go and test this out, send feedback to me directly. I'll pause here, see if there's any questions from anyone on. All right. It's the afternoon lull after lunch. I get it. So let's close. I want to say thank you for everyone that joined. Thank you for everyone that watches this in the future. Again, happy to receive any feedback and wish list stats and KPIs you want me and Tyler to work on and get out here live for you. We're happy to do it. But with that said, we'll close the webinar. We'll send this out. But thank you all for your time and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks all.
Thanks.